Did you see the price gouging structure for Star Wars Outlaws? Yeah, we actually just talked about it again at the very top of the stream. I mean, my stance has been the same for this as it has been for like years. Don't pre-order anything. Don't buy the premium edition. Like, there's no reason to buy a $130 edition of a game to get a season pass for DLC that you don't know if it's going to be good. It's assuming the game is worth full price, which we don't know it's worth full price. Like, nobody should be buying the premium editions, much less pre-ordering even the basic edition. Like, nobody should be doing this. These companies have been doing this for years. Like, Ubisoft had multiple premium ultra editions going back to like AC Unity. So I think even further than that, honestly. So this is nothing new, unfortunately, but the rules still apply. Everything is still the same. Don't buy them. Okay, like, same thing. Don't. It's not that complicated. Don't nominate Banishers. Yeah, Banishers is good. The lip sync and facial animations are also a little rough, but I think that they have the built-in it's not a get out of jail free card, because I think it's just a matter of scope and scale. It's just a lower budget game made by a smaller team, and they price it as such. It's not a full $70 game. And that's the whole thing. If you have like a couple of shortcomings with your game, if it's not like the most groundbreaking game graphically, that's okay. People just would ask that you don't charge groundbreaking prices. Like, it's not that complicated. And I think, unfortunately, it's just nowadays every studio is like, yeah, well, our game is like pretty good and we worked really hard on it, so it's $70. It's full price. And it's like, I get it. That's what makes the budget work for this. But if you're charging the same price as GTA 6, people are going to expect that level of quality. And if you fall short, you shouldn't be surprised when people call you out and are like, oh, look how bad this is in comparison to what I can spend my money on over here. You know, it's why I think, like, unfortunately the AAA price point has kind of lost meaning and value, because when everybody charges $70, including the top of the top, best of the best studios, it makes those mid-tier games that are priced there seem like a really bad value, you know? All of this brings me to this post, which is based off of an interview discussing Hellblade 2. Now, they're doing a couple things to counter the frustrations with the shorter length. For one, if you are not playing the game through Game Pass, which I feel most people will, the game is digital only and costs $50. So it's not a full price game. It's a high production value game. It's a very, I'm sure it was expensive to make. You know, it's taken them 7 years or so to put together, but they're not charging a full 70, which I can respect. You know, even being shorter, the lower price point makes it much more palatable. And this is a lesson that the industry has learned from years past, where shorter games always get into trouble, even if their really high production value is a selling point. It's gonna be a point of discussion. It just will be. Same thing with like the most iconic and recognizable instance of this was with the Order 1886, which you might actually see the collector's edition of the Order 1886 up here. That game, beautiful, stunning visually, crazy high production value. And actually a lot of the devs that worked on that game ended up going off and working at Naughty Dog and Sony Santa Monica. So that game kind of set up a lot of the talent that would go on to make some of the biggest and most recognizable games of the later PS4 generation. And that game cost full price, had a collector's edition, but it was like 5 hours long, 6 hours long. Some people got through it as short as 4 hours. It was a very, very short game. And it was just deemed unacceptable to charge full price but not provide a super long campaign. It seems to me that most people's standards are about 15 hours. Like, if you can't get to 15 hours, you shouldn't be charging full price. That seems to be the cutoff. Even Spider-Man 2, which was like 17 hours for most people, I think on average, that game even upset a lot of people. And so I think 15 is like the minimum you gotta hit. You can say like, oh, but the production value is so crazy high that, you know, that's just where it is, you know, and you spend, I heard one executive say in an interview, he's like, yeah, people just need to get a new perspective. They're spending 10 hours playing our game that's really high production value and is crazy impressive, took years and years to make. And they're upset that they're spending, at the time, it was like $60, because I think it was an interview about the Order 1886. And they're like, they're spending $60 and they're upset about it. But they'll spend that money going out to the movies for 2 or 3 hours, or for an evening to go get dinner and see the movie. And they're fine spending that much money with that form of entertainment. But with gaming, the standards are different. And it's like, yeah, I do think the standards are different. For one, you're not going out. You're staying at home, sitting on your couch, playing a game. Standards are different. Expectations are different. And it just is the case that players expect more for their money. So instead of complaining that it's not like the movie theater, maybe we should just learn how to deal with it. You know? Yeah. Anyway, that's the whole thing. But what they've said, countering this, is that, quote, I think what we always set out to do was to tell a story for the game length to be appropriate for the story, and for the game length to be appropriate for the story we want to tell. So it's not really a case of setting out to make shorter experiences. I think it is, there's a story that we want to tell here with a beginning, middle, and end. What is the right shape and size of experience to tell that story. So that's kind of where we start. He said digital distribution has opened up space for, quotes, games of all shapes and sizes. I guess like it lowers cost of distribution. So I guess technically that's right. He added, quote, so I'm really pleased to see that there's a lot of people that actually enjoy a shorter experience, something that they can sit down on a whatever Friday night, stick their headphones on, turn off the lights, and kind of sink into an experience. And players who don't necessarily want something that is 50 hours long, 100 hours long. So it's as long as it needs to be. And I'm one of those people. I like shorter games. I think there's a lot of pressure from people's time, or on people's time these days. And I think our fans, from what we hear from them, they enjoy a shorter game where our intention is that every step of the journey is meaningful. There's an audience of people that want games that are focused. And I think that that's true. I do think there's a lot of people that want leaner, meaner experiences. So I do think that there's a place for that, definitely. And the ultimate get out of jail free card with this is just that it's on Game Pass. So even if you're like, yeah, the $50 price tag still might not be worth it for me being a 7-8 hour game, it's on Game Pass. So if you already have a subscription, you just download it. You know, like Game Pass breaks all of our traditional understandings of like pricing and budgetary considerations. Like it just breaks it, because it's like, oh, well, just download it. You probably already have a Game Pass subscription. Just download it, play it, whatever. Not that complicated, you know? And I have no doubt that this is going to be a really cutting edge game graphically and in terms of the ambition they've put forward here. And the original game was already really trippy, even though it was really short. But I do expect it'll probably grow a little repetitive, a little bit tedious. And frankly, I would rather the game cut itself off at 8 hours if it's starting to get repetitive than try to stretch itself to 20 hours. You know, like I would rather the game quit while it's ahead than try to be something it's not. You know, this isn't going to be a 40-50 hour game like God of War Ragnarok. So maybe don't pretend like it's going to be and try to force it. And with Game Pass, yeah, if it were 3 hours and it's on Game Pass, I can still be baffled that it took 7 years to put together, but at the very least for me, it's not an added cost. So I'm still very interested. I still think there's some weird stuff going on with it. I am still just really weirded out by the departure of Tamim, because Tamim was like a pretty high level guy. I mean, he was the writer, director. He was the co-founder of the studio. He was the creative director for the studio. I mean, this would be like Neil Druckmann or Cory Barlog leaving their studios and then the studio just not mentioning it, because that's what happened. They didn't tell anybody until apparently they were on a recent visit to UK-based studio. Polygon noted that there was no sign or mention of Antoniadis, I think, who was formerly the chief creative director of the company. And so they reached out to executives, and a spokesperson for Xbox were like, where is he? Why wasn't he there? Is he sick? Is he okay? And like, oh no, he doesn't work there anymore. It's just weird. It's just a little weird. So it could be nothing. Again, it could just be that he is just taking millions and going off doing his own thing. You know, if they sold, how much did Ninja Theory sell for? Do they say in this article? 117 million is what they were bought for. And he was a co-founder. And I don't know if they had any other business partners, but at the very least, he probably took home a few $1 million. Maybe like 10, 20, 30 million. So he's probably doing great. You know, he's very comfortable financially. And maybe he did just bail, but it's still weird that they didn't mention it at all. You know, it's just a little weird. From what we know, he did still work on the early development side of the game. So he was there for the first few years, maybe outlining some stuff. And then he left at some point. It's not super clear when, but it's just a little unique. Could be nothing, could be just a weird timeline and they just didn't mention it because like, yeah, it's not really important. We thought it was going to worry people. Or it could be a sign of internal like drama within the studio. Who knows? But what we do know is we looked it up on Instagram. He posts all the time pictures of him like off partying and stuff. So even if he was like welcomed to leave or something and like executives had complaints against him and they're like, okay, go away, which to be clear, there's no evidence of that. But even if he was like welcome to leave, it seems like he just took his bag and went off and he's just partying like a madman. So he's living his best life as far as we can tell, but still just a very unique situation because you don't see that very often. As for everything else, you know, I'm still very hopeful for Hellblade. I think it has a lot of potential as a game. I want to see what they've got cooking because I have a feeling like they have a lot of cool stuff up their sleeves that they are not dropping and not revealing. They're going to wait until people actually see it, which makes sense. I mean, if the game isn't that long, it makes sense that you wouldn't actually go out and like reveal all your coolest stuff. You'd keep some of it close to the chest. And it seems like that's what they're doing here. So we shall see. He took my thing.